Welcome to the third video in Fun with Physiology. In the first two videos, we talked about how 5 of the primary electrolytes affected cellular action potentials. In this video, we're going to be looking at the relationship between receptors and how they influence cellular function. As I mentioned in the previous two videos, cells within our bodies have responses depending on the system that they're associated with. Most cells within our body are unable to initiate their action unless they're signaled to do so. And this is where receptors come into play. Receptors are protein structures that either span the cell membrane or are located inside the cell. These receptors are responsible for processing signals, and initiating cellular function. Without signaling these receptors, cells would not be signaled to initiate their specific function. This would mean cardiac cells would not create a heartbeat, brain cells would not have thought or cognition, skeletal muscles would not have body movement, and so forth. The term is used to explain how medications interact with cellular receptors. For the sake of this video, we'll be talking about any type of substance, whether it be natural or man-made, that affects and stimulates these receptors. The role of receptors is to initiate the cell's intended function. Receptors are either in a state of signaling or not signaling. It is rare that you'll find receptors that will be somewhere in that in-between state between active and inactive. When a receptor is signaling, this is referred to as an active state. An inactive state is when a receptor is not signaling. There are 4 major types of receptors. First are called ion channel receptors. These receptors are responsible for moving electrolytes in and out of the cell. The functions of these primary electrolytes have been illustrated through the schoolhouse theory in the first 2 videos within this series. The second type of receptor are called G-protein couple receptors. G-protein couple receptors are the most abundant receptors within the body. As a side note, approximately 34% of all pharmaceutical medications approved by the FDA focus on influencing this receptor group. The third type of receptors are enzyme-linked receptors. These receptors stimulate changes in the intracellular enzymes. They're also referred to as catalytic receptors. Intracellular receptors are the fourth type of receptors. As the name implies, these receptors are inside the cell and tend to influence changes within the nucleus or the control center of the cell. At this point in time, it's not necessary to differentiate between the 4 types of receptors. What's important is to understand that signaling a receptor will result in the cell's action, and inhibiting a signal diminishes the action of a cell. Receptors exist in an equilibrium between a state of active and inactive states. A ligand is a substance that signals receptors into active states. Achieving an active state is referred to as an active receptor confirmation. Now, there are 2 basic categories. There's agonists and antagonists. An agonist is a ligand that signals a receptor into an active state. An antagonist, on the other hand, is a ligand that stimulates a receptor, but it stimulates it at a significantly lesser level than its agonistic cousin. So I think we spent plenty of time living within the scientific realm talking about receptors and receptor theory. So let's try to bring this conversation down to a level for everybody who isn't a scientist. For illustration's sake, we are going to go back to the schoolhouse theory. Now, within each of these schools, there's a principal. But these principals aren't incredibly confident individuals. For them to initiate the response associated with the school, they need to receive a signal from a messenger who signals them to a school's function. I want to point out that these messengers are ligands, and these ligands are the substances, whether being natural or administered through medications, that signal a receptor into an active state. There are 3 methods these messengers can deliver their message to the principal and signal him to initiate the school's function. The first method is the messenger has a key to the front door. And by having a key to the front door, he's able to go to the door, unlock it, walk right into the principal's office and deliver the message to the principal. Once the principal receives that message, he will signal the school to initiate its intended function. The second method of signaling comes from a messenger who doesn't have a key to the front door. Since he doesn't have a key, he has to find the doorbell at the front of the school. And once he finds that doorbell, he pushes the button, which signals the principal inside the school to initiate the school's intended function. The third method of signaling involves a messenger who doesn't have a key to the school, nor does he have the ability to find the doorbell. But what he does possess is he has a radio that is in direct contact with the principal. So he uses this radio to signal the principal that there's a need to initiate the school's intended function, and the principal does so once he receives that radio signal. The last method of signaling is not really signaling per se, but involves antagonists. As I mentioned earlier, antagonists are agonists, but they signal a receptor at a much lower level than their agonistic cousins. So when we have these antagonists, these individuals squat themselves on the front door of the school, and they prevent a messenger from coming into the school even if they have a key. They don't allow the messenger to push the doorbell, and they also possess radio jammers that prevents a messenger from taking his radio and utilizing that to signal the principal inside. Since there's no way to deliver a message to the principal, the school never initiates its intended function. So why is the concept of receptor theory relevant to EMS providers? First off, understanding receptor theory gives providers a broader insight for causes of clinical findings in patients. And this is true, especially if you have a medical condition that either under-signals a receptor or over-signals a receptor. And this is the first and important step if you want to understand how medications influence human physiology and pathophysiology. For tuning in to this month's video on Fun with Physiology. I hope this video provided you with a better understanding of how cellular receptors function, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video as we continue to explore and simplify human physiology. Thank you.